Hey, this is Sabrina, Monarch of Monarch Astrology and Magic of the Spheres podcast, bringing you an episode on the Mars-Uranus conjunction in Taurus that's active now. It will be exact on July 15th, 2024 at around 10 a.m. Eastern at 26 degrees of Taurus. And this is one of our most dynamic, major transits of 2024. It has some difficult edges to it for sure. It is radical, revolutionary, activating. It can bring sudden or kind of shocking events. And there's also a lot of opportunity within it for breakthrough. So a lot of what I talk about on this channel is how to participate with the transits in a way that supports your soul's evolution, that supports your spiritual journey. So that's the angle that we're going to take. And we're also going to focus on the way that this is happening in the sign of Taurus, because Mars-Uranus itself is very, the revolutionary impulse is activated, emphasized, and there can be a kind of extreme or erratic energy. But Taurus is a very stable, Venusian, fixed sign. So generally, I think that this transit speaks to some very deep-seated, deep-set issues being shaken up so that they might change. Let's talk for a moment about breakthrough, which is a Uranian quality. Uranus is a planet that relates to sudden, it's like a shock, a bolt of lightning. It can relate to trauma, right? Like a large amount of energy that doesn't get integrated or doesn't move through all the way, or the energy of breakthrough, like being able to integrate that wave of immense energy and come out on the other side brand new. I think of Uranus a little bit almost like that superhero energy of like getting bit by the spider, getting struck by lightning, and then gaining these powers overnight. It has that sudden change effect. And when we can't integrate the change, that's when it's experienced as trauma. And maybe we go through a process of healing or integrating that takes some time. But Uranus is essentially that big, maybe very alien, very new amount of energy that gets integrated or gets introduced into the story or into our bodies. And then Mars, the planet that relates to our vital life force energy, athletics, war, strife, pain, motivation, energy. You put Mars and Uranus together, and there's quite a lot of agitation in the field, right? Mars can be very urgent or wants to rush. Uranus accelerates events. Or you have an intensification and electricity, Uranus, of the Martian, right? So just the simple energy, the vitality, the life force that we're kind of in the soup of right now has a more electrical and nervy quality. And also that force of Uranus that is this wave of high electrical energy that is serving ultimately liberation and breakthrough, it is being sped up and emphasized and kicked up by the Mars transit. Breakthrough itself is a very Uranian quality, but Mars also participates in the breakthrough, specifically through pain or anger, and the way that those energies might spark an awareness that something must give, something needs to change, right? That maybe we need to face that pain or that anger and not simply spin out in it, but see what is the deeper message, what kind of change is this asking for? As I am like the main character or the hero of my life story, what is the thing that I am being called to do, to change, to face? So we put Mars in this Venusian cozy sign of Taurus. And there can be a way that the life force that Mars and Taurus represents and that we've been now working with this transit, it can point to the places where we self-soothe or smooth things over, that we're motivated toward peace and beauty, which is nice in some regards. But when we're looking at Mars and Uranus coming together, it might point us to places where enough is enough, where we have been, smoothing things over and making things nice and soothing ourselves out of activated states. But the radical change that is being asked for hasn't been fully addressed. So the irritant builds up in our systems, and we get our patience wears down. And so we're more aware of things that we can't really tolerate in the same way that we have been able to in the past. So as these inner and outer forces are pushing for a more radical change, it's also likely that this is precipitated or foreshadowed by feeling extremely uncomfortable, feeling like we're itching out of our skin, being just nerve agitated. And this is what a lot of people are going through at the moment. So just take note of that. This discomfort creates the likelihood that people, including ourselves, might lash out. Not just because the kettle is very hot with Mars-Uranus conjunct, but because Taurus also relates to temper. It's known that Taurus is kind of like that calm bull sitting in a field of flowers, but at a moment's notice can become quite angry or enraged. Or there's been like a adaptability to an irritant for a long time. There's been a resilience, there's been an endurance, and then suddenly a cap is met and enough is enough. I think the thing is, well, we can easily look down on lashing out or simply be like, oh, Mars-Uranus is happening. I should stay calm or stay inside or not lash out. Might we be curious about what is like causing this tendency to want to lash out? Like there's this erratic force of nature that's moving through the field right now with the Mars-Uranus conjunction. And it's not necessarily about just fuck it, like go all carnival and just give into it or to repress it on the other end. But it's like, can you find the animal body respect inside of the irritation, the agitation, that desire to lash out? What is turning us feral in this moment? So it is an unstable and erratic and potentially dangerous energy, the Mars-Uranus conjunction. But what information or wisdom, what potential for breakthrough is held inside of it? So a few things along these lines that I want to point out. First is that Taurus is a fixed earth sign. And so fixed earth can mean embedded and long-standing dynamics. It's like packed soil. Taurus is one of the least budgeable signs. It's a sign that relates to homeostasis and creating security. Our habits are Taurian. Our most deep set habits that live in our body are also Taurian, right? These deep set habits that make up our most easiest default choices, the most worn down grooves in our patterned habitual body. These things can be changed, but it takes some power, some effort. It's part of the Taurian design to maintain and cultivate and deepen what is. At a more sophisticated level within the sign, we go beyond like a couch potato, eating the same thing we always eat and numbing out kind of vibe, which can be a default pattern set. And we enter this like lush, luxurious garden, right? Like opening up sensation in the body, deepening your body awareness and relationship with your environment. Deeper and deeper levels of sensation and somatic reception. These things which often open up because we feel safe, right? Like if we don't feel safe or we're in fight or flight, we might be running a lot of high sensation, but there are certain pockets of experience that will be less likely to open. And anyway, I'm getting on a little bit of a tangent there. Taurus relating to these deep set patterns in the body and in our habitual body, Mars-Uranus comes in with sudden shocks, volatile energy that shakes up some of this condensed habit energy. In some sense, Taurus can really hate change. It gets grumpy and destabilized, and basic security feels threatened. So at an inner level, there may be just some turmoil of like, I don't want to be interrupted. I don't want to be shocked. And at the same time, we may be very burdened by some of these habits, right? Like if you have a part of yourself that is really stubborn and you've been working in your personal development, like spiritual journey path to change it or to open or loosen it, this might be a time where that breakthrough happens. And it happens through agitation or through heat. Something for us to be aware of within all of this, though, is that the resistance to change in this sign, the narrow focus on our own personal reality or preferences, does make us more likely to be blindsided. I remember watching The Last Tsar on Netflix and wondering if Tsar Nicholas II was a Taurus, because there were multiple signs and signals that change was coming in the nation, and he kept acting like it was no big deal or nothing was happening, and he was looking away. And sure enough, he was a Taurus sun. And not that Taurians can't be sensitive and aware, but sometimes there is this kind of narrow blinder kind of situation. So we have our personal reasons, conscious and unconscious, for staying in this narrow lane of our own preferences and habits. However, the larger reality doesn't care always to conform to those things. So there may be some activations at this time that shock test our previous narrow spaces in ourselves, our previous methods of maintaining homeostasis. And it may not be so negative, right? Especially if you are leaning into your evolution and are trying to awaken some more stuck, recalcitrant parts within yourself. But where it is more shocking, where it is more like, what was that? It is showing a blind spot, possibly. Another way this transit can touch on embedded or longstanding dynamics is that the dynamics in question may have reached a boiling point, but in the past were not too much. These things may have actually been tolerable, and as the dynamic escalates, where we have been growing and awakening in a certain way, we get to a place where things just have to change, right? It might be if you've been in a certain dynamic that reflects a certain baseline of self-esteem, and you've been working to deepen intimacy and connection with yourself, that the irritants of being maltreated or not valued become more and more like, I actually find this untenable. This happens in terms of becoming more embodied or more aware of our needs. We lose the capacity to override those needs, right? So look to where things are agitating and it's like, actually, these things have been happening for a while. I just was able to take it for this long and I can't take it anymore. Hence revolution, right? But it wasn't that way yesterday. It wasn't that way last month. It's like something actually is stirring that is asking for change. Another thing I want to point out is that Taurus rules the throat and is ruled by Venus. And so if we're thinking about breakthroughs, we should also think about blockages. So if we think about throat energy center blockages, this has to do with not speaking or not communicating, right? Feeling that like lump in your throat or like it's hard to say the thing. It can also be about not speaking the truth, speaking sideways, speaking deceitfully. And there's a kind of deceit that I would highlight specifically of a Venusian kind, which is smoothing things over to keep the peace, being accommodating in an inauthentic way, or pretending that things are okay when they aren't. All of these things are not necessarily so bad and wrong. They may be appropriate in certain situations. But if you think about it from like a profound inner revolutionary, living your most authentic life perspective, it may be, where have things reached a boiling point because you've been falsely communicating for a while, lying to yourself about what you need and want, lying to others in that way. And that maybe there have been some ulterior needs and motives involved that may not be entirely nefarious, like having a hard time letting go, or like being attached to still being able to be in connection or to have access to certain people and certain spaces, and then trying to control those connections being maintained by withholding things or acting like things are okay or accommodating and whatnot. This transit, however, makes patience wear thin, tempers flare. The problem may have been boiling under a calm veneer for some time, for ourselves and for others. It's important, again, to keep in mind that this dynamic may have been previously tolerable. We might be recognizing or having greater clarity around why we endured. There might be a significant shift around our self-concept or self-esteem in the matter, right? Or just what do we fundamentally and basically value? The force of nature within this transit, combined with the Venusian qualities of the voice here, make me think of things that once said change everything and cannot be taken back. You know that energy that lives inside of you, like, right? Sometimes we are wise to hold these things in and get to a better place of integration and wisdom within them, rather than lashing out. I don't know if that came through because there was a really loud plane that came overhead, but I was just saying sometimes we're wise to hold these things in and get to a better place of integration or wisdom and like sureness. Like, am I ready to say this thing that's going to change everything? But then other times, holding back the hard thing to say is perpetuating an increasingly untenable situation. So again, the energy is volatile of this transit, but it commands our respect. And remember, it is related to Taurus and the voice and the throat, so it may have something to do with what we're verbalizing or not verbalizing. And then lastly, Taurus relates to survival needs in evolutionary astrology. A Mars-Uranus conjunction in Taurus, in my experience, this time and the last time that we had it, constellates moments of panic or unease around not having enough or feeling unsafe. And this is because Uranus is a trauma and liberation signature. Trauma in the sense that the energy can get stuck or not fully processed and integrated, right? Like you could have like a really, like a fight with someone, and you could move it all the way through your body and be done with it, or you can hold on to it as something that you're now kind of traumatized by. So whatever the event, whatever the trigger, it's a question of did it move all the way through? And with Uranus and Taurus, the trauma signature has something to do with scarcity, survival issues, not being valued, and not being safe. Then Mars comes in and further agitates that. I have at least noticed that in myself this time, and that when this transit comes around, I catch myself worrying about basic things or being more prone to fright, right? And catastrophizing things in my mind. I believe during this transit, people in general are more nervous about their basic needs and are more hair-triggered about the signals that something will be scarce or unsafe. So one, even just recognizing that, because while this transit has been happening, it's like I'm getting those like emergency signals and then realizing, oh, it's the transit, and being able to differentiate between, why am I freaking out right now? And maybe I need to do some kind of nervous system regulation thing, or look at the deeper, more radical thing that's being pointed to me here, rather than believing the story that my mind is making up in the moment. On the breakthrough side, there's something here about learning how to resource ourselves better in all the ways, or how to radically receive and relax into what we already have. Like realizing where you do have enough, right? Like there's often like this grip of like, if something happens to my job, I'm going to lose all my money and I'm going to be on the street and I'm going to die. Like it's like this escalation of assumptions of what will happen, not taking into account the grace of the universe, people that would actually help us if we were in a dire situation, certain assets and skills that we have. Like, how much do we really just relax into when we do have? And so this is, of course, situation specific. Sometimes people are in true experiences of scarcity or lack, but there's also many times when there's simply a fear that things are going to go away, or that the other shoe's going to drop, or that something bad is going to happen, when nothing is actually unsafe at the moment. It's just a future projection of the fear. There's nervous system and spiritual breakthroughs to be had around relating to the unknown and to the threats that we project onto the unknown. So I'm going to share something here, that the last time that Mars-Uranus were conjunct in Taurus, which was 2 summers ago, I was doing plant medicine and experiencing many ego deaths, experiencing many moments of terror inside of that. And I knew that Mars-Uranus was happening in a very self-aware way. But one of the things that happened is that I saw death around every corner, that maybe a boulder would fall on us from the trail, or that maybe something else sudden and unknown would end me. Like, I just saw all these different ways my mind anticipated that something bad was going to happen. It became so apparent to me that the death anxiety was everywhere, that I ended up being shown how to just choose life and spend the time I do have with quality, rather than gripping on in fear the whole time until the end, that inevitable end. Opening to what is, and again, to the time that I have. This stuck with me in a radical and ongoing way, like really deeply changed my life. I never became reckless as to not respect the fragility of life. But I did start seeing all the subtle ways that I could literally just stop worrying about death and focus on living. And know that because our time is limited here, that that can put things in perspective about how we spend our time, basically. That I could put my attention on the life I'm creating, as opposed to letting myself be haunted by the fears, right? And knowing that they kind of go hand in hand. If we value something, we're also going to be afraid of losing it. And being afraid of loss the whole time is not the same as enjoying what we have. So all of this is different when there is an actual threat. But when it's more conceptual and anxiety-based or future tripping, the fear that resources will run out, the fear that we'll lose the ability to make resources, etc., there can be a lot of space here for opening into deeper levels of trust in reality and reception within ourselves, reception that we have from receiving from the earth, from the universe. The fear, grip, and anxiety patterns will perpetuate certain behaviors and then produce certain results. And it would be a great paradigm shift and awakening to live, participate, and create from a place of trust, reception, ease, feeling like one has enough, and that one will be provided for. And don't get me wrong, during this transit with Mars-Uranus and Taurus, it is likely that there will be moments of feeling so uncomfortable, or feeling those trauma triggers come up around not having enough or things feeling scarce. It's okay that that is coming up. What you can do is look at those signals as they arise and see if there's room inside of them to actually have a breakthrough. Because these things that get accelerated at this time, it's always vulnerable being an organism, right? Like, our bodies are part of an evolutionary process where we are hardwired to survive. So of course we're going to have survival anxiety, depending on our situation. But say like we have a normal, basically safe life situation, those anxieties may be playing at like a lower level, but during Mars-Uranus spike a bit. And yes, it's uncomfortable, but there may also be a moment to profoundly open inside of, or shift something, or come home to a deeper awareness of, wow, this is the amount of money that I have in the bank. Like, this is the safety net I have. This is the internal resource. Like, I have this magic. I have this ability. Gratitude, even community, network, like actually receiving what we have. So that's what I have for you. I forgot to say at the beginning to please like this video, subscribe, leave a comment. It's really helpful for my channel. if you subscribe and if you comment and whatnot. So if you are watching this, please subscribe if you aren't already. And then I also want to let you know that I am running a Kickstarter to fund a year ahead of free content like this, and the episodes, interviews, etc., that I share on Magic of the Spheres podcast. So a year ahead of forecasts and podcasts. Let me just show you at the moment our progress. We have 31 backers, 29 days to go, and we have made $6,536 out of a 24K goal. So that's just the minimum goal that we need on Kickstarter to be funded. The last 2 times I ran this campaign, we did pretty well. The last time we had 157 backers, so I would love to match and exceed that this time. So how this works is that it is putting out a tip jar for those of you that love my work, who have been positively impacted by it, who want to support and energize it for a year ahead. But not only are you putting things in the tip jar, but you're receiving things in return. I have a number of available rewards that you can pledge for, including talks, a visualization, a very Uranian talk called Struck by Lightning, some different astrology readings from me, as well as a Glamour Magic course and the Evolutionary Astrology Intensive, a steep $1,000 discount to my popular, beloved Evolutionary Astrology Intensive that I've been teaching since, I think it was either late 2017 or early 2018. And then you can also bundle. I've got 2 superstar backers so far for bundling the Glamour Magic course and the Evolutionary Astrology Intensive together. So Glamour Magic, that one I like to talk to you a little bit extra about, because why am I teaching Glamour Magic? It's not something I've ever taught before. It comes from years of my relationship to my physical appearance as a Taurus moon, as a moon Pluto person, as a Venus Pluto person, in that I alchemized a lot of pain and anguish around those things and learned how to clear that pain, or what I call negative enchantments, and then how to enchant myself, enchant my vessel with greater and more radical self-esteem, to the point where when I look in the mirror, I pretty much only have positive things to say, and my flaws don't bother me so much. Again, another plane is coming overhead. So Glamour Magic, I find important to share and teach because a lot of people want to feel beautiful. And sometimes that desire is painful. Sometimes it even gets suppressed, or it's like, whatever, I don't need to feel that way. Like we get used to the pain of all the messaging that we've received from the beauty industrial complex and cultural beauty standards. But what a tax on our life force, what a tax on our power. I have a vision and a method around going into those spots where our power, our life force energy has been entangled with these negative cultural messages, retrieving that energy, recycling it, and allowing it to be your creativity, your power, your glamour sovereignty instead. So make no mistake, my Glamour Magic course is actually going to be a very deep, Pluto-inspired course on beauty, and opening up to being more luxurious in your physical essence. So if you want to read more about the course page is linked. I'd suggest reading it if your interest has been piqued, because I know from people telling me that even just my posts on Instagram and the course page have been sparking a process and an opening and new perspectives for people. And of course, if you want to join the journey, sign up through the Kickstarter, take a moment to look through the Kickstarter page and see what calls to you. Be a little bit generous if you have the means, if you love my work, and energize it for the year ahead. Thank you so much for being here. I'll be back again soon.